bomber Abdel Basset al-Megrahi thought that was maybe linked up with the same deal in the desert. So the relationship between the UK and Libya has been rocky, and obviously now with the comments from William Hague, it's getting rockier still. All those talk in recent years of optimism and progress, well, they've fallen by the wayside, Barbara.
Rory Challens with the latest there from the Foreign Office in central London. Thank you. Well, meanwhile, European Union ministers have been meeting in Brussels to finalise a statement condemning the Libyan government's crackdown on protesters. Jackie Rowland is in the Belgian capital. She sent us this report.
They came together to discuss recent events in North Africa. But inevitably, one topic dominated the agenda: Libya. European foreign ministers spoke largely with one voice when they condemned the use of violence against peaceful demonstrators.
We're extremely concerned by the events that are unfolding in Libya. We condemn the ongoing repression against demonstrators in Libya and deplore the violence and the death of civilians. We call for an immediate end to the use of force against protesters and for all parties to show restraint. Freedom of expression, the right for peaceful assembly, are human rights and fundamental freedoms for every human being and should be respected and protected. Those legitimate aspirations and the demands of people for reform should be addressed through a meaningful, open, Libyan-led dialogue.
The EU and the United States were criticised for being slow to pick up on the popular mood during the uprisings in Egypt and Tunisia. This time they are moving swiftly to demand an end to the bloodshed in Libya.
But Europe is also dependent on Libya. Italy gets 1/5 of its oil from Libyan wells, and Libyan cooperation is vital to combat illegal immigration into Europe.
This may explain why the Italians have struck a slightly different note from their other European partners.
I'm extremely concerned about the self-proclamation of the so-called Islamic Emirate of Benghazi. Would you imagine to have an Islamic Arab Emirates at the borders of Europe? This would be a really serious threat.
The Spanish foreign minister has spoken of evacuation plans for all EU citizens. And Britain has called on Libya to protect foreign nationals. But right now, Libya does not seem in the mood to listen to European demands or warnings. Jackie Rowland, Al Jazeera, Brussels.
So the Europeans making demands, but it seems that Muammar Gaddafi still has one friend in Europe that he can count on. The Italian Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi has so far refused to condemn the violence in Libya. Berlusconi sparked outrage by saying he didn't want to, quote, disturb Gaddafi during the protests. The two leaders have cultivated close personal and economic ties in recent years, including lucrative oil contracts. Well, Harry Smith joins us live now from Rome with the latest on that. Harry, we can all remember the pretty memorable pictures of Gaddafi arriving in Rome on his state visits, literally pitching up a tent in the parks in Rome while he was visiting with Silvio Berlusconi. So perhaps not a surprise that Berlusconi hasn't come out to condemn the violence that's taken place in Libya.
Not a surprise, because you've already heard that Italy is very closely linked with Libya, not just because it's the old colonial power, but because there are strong economic ties. I think we heard Jackie Rowland say earlier that Italy buys something like 30% of Libya's oil. But there is also a large expatriate community in Italy, and it's been something of a surprise that they haven't come out before now to protest against what's happening in Libya. But they did today. There was a large-ish demonstration opposite the Libyan embassy in Rome, around about 50 or 60 people. Large-ish, I say, because it's not as large as some of the demonstrations that have taken place in other European capitals. But this is still the expatriate Libyans saying that they don't like what's what's happening in Libya. They don't like the fact that their fellow citizens are being killed, and they think that Gaddafi has had too long in power in Libya, more than 40 years, and it's time for a change. So that's a big change for the Italians the Libyans who are here in Italy.
Well, many of the native Italians as well, of course, will be against the violence and all the images that we've seen come out of Libya. But another key issue, as well as the economic one, is the one of immigration. I think in 2009, Libya and Italy signed a pact whereby Libya would help guard the coast, and that's limited the immigration that comes from North Africa to Italy. How worried is the Italian government and the Italians that all of this upheaval in Libya might actually mean thousands more people landing on their shores?
Well, I think you've hit upon one of the key points, which is why the Italian government has been relatively quiet about what's happening in Libya. They're keenly aware that an upheaval in North Africa could cause Italy great problems, and that's one of the reasons why you've heard so little from the Italian government. And yes, you mentioned the agreement that they've signed, and it's crucial. Countries which are so close to North Africa are acutely aware that anything that happens there is going to impact on them more than in the rest of Europe.
Harry Smith with the latest there from Rome. Thank you very much. And I'll have a little bit more from Europe a little later in this news hour. Now let's go back to Kamal.
Cool, thanks for that, Barbara. We'll see you a little bit later on. Just want to bring you a slightly different picture to the one we have been showing. This is Libyan state television showing, well, let's have a listen actually. I think the message really is nothing to see here. There's people on the streets, proud Libyans flying their flags, supporting their government. Paints a very, very different picture to everything we've seen, the pictures we've shown you earlier and the reports we've had coming in. Local residents of a suburb east of Tripoli, or in eastern Tripoli, maybe we could say, Tajura. People saying to us, bodies killed, sorry, I'm just reading this for the first time here. Bodies of those killed and injured are piling up in the streets, simply left in the streets. That's someone in Tajura, a suburb east of Tripoli, saying that. And meanwhile, we showed you those pictures a moment ago from state television of a very different picture, almost celebrations in the street. Proud Libyans flying their flag and supporting their government. Ibrahim Jibril, still with me in the studio. That's not a huge surprise, is it, that state television does that? I mean, we get, do you know, everything that's happened, Tunisia, Egypt, here, we get an interesting insight into state television, don't we?
That's right. It just tells us that in some cases people live in two different planets at times. We don't know really when that picture was taken also, so for all we know, this could be months ago or weeks ago or whatever. But the message that the state television is trying to send, as you rightly said, Kamal, is that this is, everything is copacetic. Everything is fine, no problems.
Nothing to move along, nothing to see here.
Yeah, just move along. When, in fact, this is anything but. The world is